Hello, everybody. Welcome. I know we haven't done any live videos for a while, so I wanted to jump on today because I thought today was a really special day to do just that. Some of you may be aware there was a total solar lunar eclipse today. That's where the sun, the moon, and the earth are all lined up. And it's kind of considered to be quite a potent energy source for today. And, for a lot of the work that we do inside the inner alchemy, we look at things like this because there is certain dates across the year, certain moons, certain timings that are going to be really impactful on the global collective, and then also on the individual, and then obviously in this context of the mission itself. So for me, it's very much about not trying to force the swim upstream if there's a lot coming downstream, because then you're going to be clashing. And sometimes if you are just set to, particular goals, and you keep working and working and working, you're pushing and pushing and pushing, and you don't really feel that flow and alignment and actually any progress or results, often it can be those things that we can't see or we might not be aware of. And one of the things I think today is really important. Obviously, we're heading up towards the end of the year now. In October, I talked about the last quarter of the year, so October, November, December. But I think today, it's just important to also note, because I tend to myself work with the Chinese horoscope more. And the year of the tiger, the yang tiger, is actually on until, well, into early February. So for me, the last quarter is really November, December, January. But of course, in terms of a calendar, we can still work those quarters. But I just wanted to say that if you feel like October, you didn't really feel like you kind of made some of the progress that you wanted to, all's not lost, because we've really got November, December, and January before the energy turns, before we get to the new animal and the new year. So I think that what's really important to think about that is that Taurus, where we're in right now, and people think about the bull and they think about, bull at a gate and quite stubborn and, setting its feet in. But then the other thing we want to think about Taurus, one of my favorite words, and indeed the name of our highest program, is called Indomitable. It's called Indomitable for a reason, because the indomitable spirit of humanity is what's got us to where we are today, for better or worse, good or bad. There's obviously a whole heap of things we can talk about the history of humanity, but we don't want to go into that right now, because what we want to focus on is who we are right now and what that means for us right now, and what your choices, decisions, and actions are going to have for, obviously, for yourself and your inner circle, but also the community and collective consciousness. So when we look at the tiger and we look at the Taurian bull, one thing that we can see there is we can see this indomitable spirit, because we can see something that the bull's going to keep on going. It's very steady, steadfast, reliable, and it possesses that perseverance, that kind of persistence to it, which is what you need when you are running a mission-driven business. However, please don't mistake that for us needing to be on the go 24/7 like this. We're not robots. Okay, so it's really important to know that we need downtime. All of these animals sleep, just like us. We all need the rest and that sort of recalibration and everything. And I often feel I feel quite strongly that sometimes if you have an hour downtime, it could really boost that productivity. So we like to do everything in sort of threes and 90-day this and 90-minute blocks and so on. But if you are somebody that's just going block to block to block to block in terms of action, which is all yang, 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 just be aware that your natural energy is going to burn out at some point. So we have to keep putting these like little bits of yin in between. And we really need to re-educate our whole culture on that downtime is not a bad thing. Now, I don't want to confuse that with some people who we might feel are a bit lazy, aren't really pulling the weight, aren't really action takers, aren't really doing anything. That's a separate thing to address. But I'm talking about as a mission leader, typically somebody is that's going to go the extra mile. They want to put the effort in, they want to put the heart in, they really want to do a good job. So they're the people that I'm really addressing here. If you have sort of team members and so on that you feel like, okay, well, they're not really pulling the weight, that's a different thing entirely, and kind of beyond the scope of what we can talk about today, because I don't want to keep you all day on this. So one of the things that I think when we look at the potent energy of something like an alignment, the reason why it has an impact on us is because when all these different gates are happening, and whether you want to call them vortexes, potent potentiality portals, all these different things, it gives us an opportunity to sort of stop and look forward for the next few weeks and the next few months and really get clear on our boundaries and get clear on what it is that we want to do. I know for a fact that most of us as entrepreneurs can feel pulled in many different directions. And while that in and of itself isn't necessarily the problem is it scatters our energy, and we can get a little bit distracted, and we can really be, you know, that kind of whole shiny new object syndrome. We can be a little bit guilty of like, oh, I could go over here, oh, I could learn this, I could do that, I could, you know, jump on this, oh, that looks interesting. And we're the kinds of people that can find that quite hard. So it's not that we're fickle, it's just that we're quite enthusiastic and we're really interested in things. So it's about tempering that and putting some sort of guidelines and boundaries around it, and sort of saying like, okay, so this is my playtime, if you like. I'm going to give myself an hour and I can look at what I want and I can surf all over the internet and do whatever I want, be free. But then I'm going to sort of build in some productivity time, and we call them like ninja DMOs, daily methods of ops. It's just about a way in which you can just be acknowledging and mindful to that kind of sense of productivity and doing something. And the thing I feel really strongly about towards the end of the year is this notion that sometimes people will say to me things like, oh, well, you know, nobody really does anything in December, people are winding down, and so on and so forth. Remember that everything is as you say it is. So if you think, oh, business is winding down, everything's difficult right now, nobody's doing this, nobody's doing that, then that will be your reality. So always remember that every second of every day, somebody's buying something somewhere for whatever reason they want to buy it for. Now, I'm not talking about staples here. I'm not talking about food, shelter, heat, warmth, that kind of thing. So I'm talking about the essentials in life. I'm talking about our choices in life. So whether that be to download an audio book, buy a course, jump on an event, or whatever that might be for that individual. Always remember that globally in the collective, there's this constant. That is constant. That is 24/7 due to time zones. So I think it's really important. Sometimes I have conversations with people, and some of the first things they'll say to me in an email or when they speak is like, oh, there's a recession, oh, you know, energy prices have gone soaring, oh, this in my country, that in my country, this, whatever. What I notice, and I want to really say respectfully, is that in our history of humanity, there is always something. And there's probably always going to be something. Now, we have two choices. As mission-driven entrepreneurs, we can take one of two stances here. We can be pushed and pulled by media, society, government, whatever disaster's happening, or we can go the other way and be more proactive and go, okay, yeah, I'm conscious, I'm aware of these things. However, it's not going to knock me off my trajectory and what I'm doing. Now, you need to be bendy like bamboo, and we need to sort of obviously oscillate slightly, and we might need to be flexible and shift things around and move things around the chessboard, of course. But in our core, in our soul, in our foundations, we are what we are. And I think one of the things for me why a dojo is such a solid, grounded, foundational aspect to run all of that kind of stuff off, because it just is. It doesn't matter what day it is, what the weather's like, what's happening in the world, in any sense or form, it just is. The essence of it is robust. And as I say, it might bend slightly in the wind, but it doesn't break. It is. Okay. And when you have that solid foundation, which is why I always call that like the inner alchemy, that solid groundedness, then you weave out of it the conscious business model. And then on top of that, you're building the way you are each day, the way you kind of bring in culture for your team, bring systems and structures in, the way you handle your creative media and digital marketing, and so on and so forth. You're building this really strong organism, I'm going to call it, that's harnessing nature and moving with it. So coming back to that whole kind of total lunar solar eclipse, is that when the earth aligns, we've got to remember at time to time, and I know this is really difficult, but sometimes we're so involved in our own stuff, which is understandable because everybody's got lives, families, commitments, whatever's going on for the individual. So of course you're going to be insular some of the time and focus on that. But if you pop up and look around and talk to people, you often find common threads. And some of these things are what we would say that are happening in the collective consciousness. So sometimes remember what is happening to you could be a mirror of what is happening out there. And you could be having an experience of that for whatever reason that be, and whatever gems and jewels you take out of it. And again, this goes back to solid foundations. For me personally, having 30 odd years in the martial arts, nothing touches me. Now, that doesn't mean I don't care. Doesn't mean I don't post things regularly on social media that I feel really strongly about. Of course I do. But what it does for me is it fuels me more in that the mission is my front and center always. And obviously your mission is slightly different to ours. Everybody's got a different take on what their mission is. But for me personally, I always am focused on the globe as a collective. And I'm always looking at how, who, what can we do more to help people really thrive in the missions, which is the whole point of $1 million missions. What can we do to help somebody get to that next level, to break through whatever the limiting beliefs, or kind of have better creative media, or whatever that thing might be for them? Because I look at it that the more of these lights are on globally, the more impact we're having on the collective consciousness, and the more we can start to shape it. Because you've got to remember the collective consciousness is malleable, and oftentimes it's being manipulated by external, let's say, people, forces, corporations, governments, whatever you want to call it, in ways that a lot of us aren't happy about. And you have two choices: continue to be pulled around by these external factors, or be your own mission, hook up with all the different kind of mission leaders so that you know that you're not alone, because you never are, and do your bit. And that for me is the most important thing, and that for me is what keeps me grounded the most, because I know that you know, from a black belt focus perspective, that's all I need to keep my eye on, is that target. And rather, it's not about never meeting the target, but it's like you meet that kind of target, and then there's another one, and there's another one. Because obviously for quests and challenges and adventures and all these different experiences, we're always evolving, you know, we're always expanding. Things are always like that kind of, you know, we want to keep that oscillating upward spiral. So it's really, really important. And when we come back to the collective, rather than seeing it as like, oh my gosh, there's all this massive stuff out there, how on earth can I impact it? Think about it the other way. Sometimes it only takes one voice, and there's lots of people through history that have shown us that it takes one voice with a conviction, with a message that other people believe in, who join forces, and it can sway a nation completely. So never underestimate it, and never think, for example, like people will say, oh, who am I to do this? I don't know whether it'll work. Is anybody going to listen to me? Is it a big enough mission? I hear all kinds of variations of that. And the thing that I want to say the most is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your mission helps one person in the next year, because that one person, you do not know the ripple effect of that one person, who they know, who they go and work with, who they influence. You don't know that. So whether it's one person or a million people, that isn't what you should be keeping your eye on. What you should be keeping your eye on is like, I'm on a mission too, and whatever that is for you and why that is so important to you. And then every single day, all you need to be doing is like, okay, what can I do to move forwards? What can I do to expand this? What can I do to evolve it? What can I do to make it better as it is? Because maybe you're at a certain level and that's okay for you, but you're thinking, gosh, I'm struggling with people, I'm struggling with systems, I'm struggling with the digital marketing, whatever it might be. Find the help and support for that particular issue and don't overthink it. And one of the things that was really, really kind of juicy to me this week, which was quite a revelation, actually, I talked to both men and women of mission leaders. And obviously from a female perspective, and, I've been through domestic violence, I've been through bankruptcy, I've lost $1 million in a business, I've had homelessness, I've had, honestly, a list. I'd be here all day with trauma and challenge and so on and so forth. So as a female and as a woman entrepreneur, I'm very, very, very caring and bothered about other women having equal pay, equal rights, equal opportunities in that sense. I'm not really a feminist type in that way, because I believe in yin and yang and that we need both. I don't have one cancelling the other out ever. It's always like a dance to me in that sense. But obviously I do care about women, and I do obviously have a special thing in my heart when I meet other women that have been through any kinds of abuse and violence and trauma and stuff, and then particularly as I mean, that's bad enough on its own, but if they've also then got children that they're trying to raise on their own, it's incredibly difficult. So I always have that as obviously a bit of a heart center for me. But equally for men, I've watched, because this happened to my own dad, I've watched men who are equally trying to juggle the roles of being like father, husband, breadwinner, business owner, leader, and all that kind of thing. And they equally struggle because the roles are like this. So for the women, it's like women are saying yes to everything and they go to the bottom of the pile. So the woman is a giver, is a nurturer, cares, kills themselves off because they just can't stop saying yes to people and all the rest of it. But then on the other hand, you've got men that doesn't look the same way, but it's a diagonal opposite of the same thing, because they are equally saying yes to people, putting other people first, helping people at the expense of themselves. But where the woman will be noticeably bottom of her list, the guy is kind of top of his list, but he's also not on his list. So meaning, like, if I speak to CEOs and stuff that are guys and they're handling lots of people and this and that and the other, they simply don't have any time for themselves to breathe. Now, some men are better at, say, routines and things. So a lot of guys I've met over the years, and I don't know why this is, it's just obviously a preference for them, choose to get up earlier so that they can get some of what you consider me time in, and they will do things like their meditation and their exercise and this, that, and the other, and they will honor that no matter what before they get to family and work. Women, there are some women that can do that, but they're less common, because most women wake up and they're automatically into service mode. I mean, me personally, I've never been able to do that morning thing. I just couldn't even imagine it. So when I speak to men, I find that very interesting. I'm like, gosh, I don't even know how you do that, because when I wake up, I'm straight into checking everything on the business, making sure people are all right, looking after family, that's children and animals and all the rest of it. And so I wouldn't even consider to put myself first in that way. Like I say, some women manage to do that. It depends on how old the kids are. It depends if they've got a husband. It depends on their family dynamic. It depends on a lot of things. But what I'm trying to say is that even though it looks slightly different, it usually amounts to the same thing, that the person that's doing the leadership, the person that's like, where you say the book stops with you, it's like the book stops with me. The person, let's just call it the CEO, the person at the top of that is generally the person that has got the least amount of me time in most cases. So when I talked about boundaries, what's really important when we look at something like today is a time to sort of step back and go, where am I not happy? Where am I not looking after myself? yes, the mission is wildly important, but where am I wasting time? I see a lot of people wasting a lot of time. If I ask people, okay, as I said, we have to do this like ninja daily method of ops, and some of that's to do with, timekeeping. So if I say to somebody, okay, can we have a look at the way you spend your time? There's it's the same for all of us. There's gaps in there where you're like, well, that was like 2 hours wasted, or maybe, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this. Sometimes we have something where we think, oh, that'll just take me 10-15 minutes, that takes me 30 minutes, I can just knock it out, and then like an hour and a half later you haven't finished it. I am really bad at that because I overestimate what I can get done in a short amount of time. My personal like, I won't call it failing, but the thing that is, I'm very over enthusiastic about things. So I'll say, okay, so I'll put like 10 things on a list and go, yeah, I can knock that out in a few hours. Actually, it's probably going to take me 2 days. So things like that are really good to be mindful of, because you need to understand how to calculate how long jobs are really going to. I mean, obviously we always have a contingency because some things are going to take longer than others, but these are all things that I'm saying are factors in terms of energy and foundations and boundaries. Now, we haven't got time today to really go through that in sort of microscopic detail, but if we can start with looking at our time, looking at the way things are used, looking at how we feel. So how do you feel about your mission right now? How do you feel about the people that you're connected with, you're working with, you are supporting, and so on? How do you really, really, really feel? And be really honest. I mean, you can write it down, you can do whatever, you can talk to somebody, whatever's best for you, and really get that out on the table, because a lot of these kind of things people tend to put at the start of the year. And I don't really know why we have to correlate the beginning of the new year with something like this, because there's no reason not to look at things quarterly or at this time of the year or any time of the year, and just use something like now as a potent energy force. This is going across 7th, 8th and 9th of November in terms of that energy window. So I would really take that time and look at it, and also note time. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but sometimes where you are in your office or you're about to get on with things and you keep getting disrupted or distracted, or things happen, and you look at the clock and then you start to get annoyed because you're like, oh, okay, well, I've had 2 hours but I really seem to have got anywhere. Have a look at things like that as well, and then take a step back and go, why is that? What is going on for me? And have a look at how you can balance out those days. So I think just if you can read up a little bit on today, that would be great. I think if you can take an hour out for yourself today, that would be great. And just also think about, where are you right now? What are you working on sort of for the next 2-3 months? And start to really position yourself. I really don't like this idea of, everything grinds to a halt in December, and then January, miraculously, everybody's firing on all cylinders. I mean, yeah, okay, it's nice to have a break, but equally, don't look at it in terms of that it's an all or nothing, because nature is a continuum. She's flowing all the time. She doesn't sort of stop the clock and say, oh, I'll be back 2 weeks on Tuesday and then I'll pick it back up again. It's an ongoing process. Of course, there's ebb and flow. And of course, there's this sort of the dynamic going on. So it's not all like, if you think about summer and think about everything being out in bloom, it's not all bloom, 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 bloom every second of every day. Of course, there's patterns and cycles to it, but it is a continuum. And we are a continuum because we're alive in nature, because we are nature. So I often feel that in terms of missions, it's about looking at that delicate balance of the inner alchemy versus the outputs and the outcomes that you actually want. And I'll often say to people that, yes, everybody comes in for the external. How can I have a better website? Can I have a film? Can I have funnels? Can I get more clients? Can I have $1 million funnel? Yeah, okay, great, awesome. You can, for sure. And we will happily do that for you. But we're going to go backwards before we can go forwards. And we're going to look at you and the inner alchemy of you, and then what is the right design for you, for your personality, for your lifestyle, for your circumstances, and what suits you, so that it sets it up for that success in the blooming of everything else in the mission. And that's like a whole kind of gardening job, really. So I just wanted to leave you with that today. If you've got any questions, comments, or anything like that, please put them in the chat below. But I really hope you enjoy this total lunar eclipse, and have a really wonderful next few days. And we'll be doing some more lives and masterclasses coming up very soon. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.